Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's space. Going by the hashtag African marriages. Today, we have got a very exciting topic about African marriages or marriages in Africa. My name is Esther. I'm connecting from Zimbabwe. I am in the retail and distribution space. I'm also responsible for financial education in Zim. Today, we just want to discuss a topic which is at the heart of each and every person, which is about marriages. And when someone is growing up, it's always their dream to get married one day. And whether the marriage is going to last the lifetime is a topic for another day. But I'm not going to be alone in this discussion. I've got people who are going to help me from the various countries. We have a representative from South Africa. We've got a representative from Botswana. We've got a representative from Malawi. We've got a representative from Namibia. We've got a representative from Uganda. And we've got a representative from Zimbabwe. So stay tuned because today is going to be awesome when we start discussing.
Hi, everyone. We just want to apologize for the technical problems we're experiencing with the quality of the broadcast. But we want you to stay connected to us. And we're just going to welcome Esther back. If you just joined us, welcome to On the Money, a financial education platform where we discuss all things finances. So we welcome you. Just be a bit patient with us. We are back. And it seems like there's definitely a connection error, especially in the SADC region. I'm going to blame South Africa's blackouts for the trouble we're experiencing today with our connectivity. But we've got quite an array of speakers that are listed. My name is Marisa Fredericks, and I'm co-hosting with my colleague Esther, who just made a wonderful introduction. Esther, I'm hoping to hear your voice again soon. Esther Muchimhojo, she's from Old Mutual, Zimbabwe. And today we have a number of speakers on the line, with Old Mutual being a Pan-African business that spreads across 14 countries on the continent. We are truly excited to bring you a very rich conversation, as Esther has said earlier, that is based on how money is received, applied and enjoyed across the African continent, but more specifically when it comes to money and marriage. So we are very excited. This is a hot topic. I hope you and want to hear from you, audience, what experience when it comes to money and marriage. Double M, I'm calling it today. So you can participate in this discussion. Don't forget, the hashtag is African marriages. Hashtag African marriages. You can also tell us in the chat box where you're from, where you're from. Perhaps you're outside of Africa. So communication is back. Otherwise, right into the conversation and the questions that we've prepared for this afternoon's discussion. Definitely a jam-packed conversation, and everybody that's either married, interested to get married, or not interested, you will find this of value this afternoon. So what we're going to do is we're going to just jump right into the conversation, and let's quickly just introduce our co-speakers this afternoon. I'm going to start with Julian. She's from Old Mutual, South Africa. Good afternoon to you, and how are you doing? Okay, seems like we have a problem there with connection as well. Let's turn the focus to Botswana. Ama, are you in the house? How are you doing today?
I'm well, thanks. How are you? The weather in Botswana is beautiful, not too hot. We're expecting rain soon.
Fantastic. We can just tell our listeners what your role is at Old Mutual Botswana, and what are you looking forward to in this conversation today?
I'm the group head of governance for Old Mutual Botswana. And I'm particularly excited about today's session because I'm really interested in hearing about the different matrimonial regimes across the other regions, the other Omar regions. So, especially being, a Ghanaian by, originally Ghanaian, but, a Motswana by nationality, I'm excited to see the differences between the different countries. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
That sounds great. Absolutely great. We also have Malawi in the house. Old Mutual Malawi, good afternoon to you, Bernardi.
Okay. So whilst we're waiting for Marissa to come back, can I ask that the Zimbabwe co-host introduces themselves?
Good afternoon, everyone. And this is Julian Mangaba. I am based in South Africa. I'm a learning leader in Gauteng province, one of the biggest provinces in South Africa. And I'm really excited this afternoon to learn and share different marriage regimes that we have in South Africa and the implications of that as well. So I am really looking forward to this session this afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, Tato. UAP or Zim, are you there now? Please, can you introduce yourselves?
Hello, everyone. This is Daniel Opio from UAP Old Mutual Uganda. I head the business development and marketing function of the business, and I'm very happy to be here to share some of the different marriage regimes of Uganda and also some different attributes about East Africa. And also, I'll be here to listen to all of you and also willing to learn as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Zimbabwe?
Hello, everyone. My name is Meshia Monica Chuma. I am the Group Legal and Governance Officer with Old Mutual Zimbabwe. I am here to assist in the unpacking of the marriage regimes in Zimbabwe, and also just to touch briefly about how those affect our estate planning. Thank you very much.
Mercia, so I'm going to start with you on the first question. What is the financial process that takes place when you're getting married in Zim? I'm actually very interested to hear this.
Thank you very much. That's a very interesting question indeed. Because in Zimbabwe, the financial process that goes into marriage is quite a weird one, as it is mainly dependent upon the different tribes that a person belongs to. So, roughly, what I would say is there is an expectation from the family of the wife or the intended wife that a marriage consideration, which is also known as lobola or roora, is to be paid. So essentially, this is usually pegged around 3,500 to around 10,000 USD. But let me hasten to say, usually people don't pay that much money due to the economic constraints that are currently ongoing in Zimbabwe. So you'll find out that if a man struggles and raises around 2,500, it is okay for them to be given a hand in marriage by the family of the wife. And then there is also an expectation that there is a sort of a customary celebration that then goes into the whole setup of the African marriages in Zimbabwe. In these days, it is trending. You'll find out people hashtagging and saying, you know what, cows went home. So definitely there is a head of cattle that is also expected from the intended husband. So a head of about 8 to 10 beasts usually is then anticipated. But as the celebrations are also happening, people usually budget around 1,000 USD for the little celebrations that takes place. You know, the African attires people will be wearing, the cakes, the food, the decorations of the event. So usually getting married in Zimbabwe can be quite expensive and really need one to put their financial plan in place. But well, we also have a civil marriage in Zimbabwe, which is also recognized irrespective of this customary marriage. And this one is quite easy because if you're above the age of 18, you can actually agree with your partner to just jump the gun and go to the magistrate's court and have your marriage solemnized. Though lobola is an expectation, some people, because they are majors, they can actually agree to just say, you know what, we cannot afford this. Let's jump the gun and go ahead and get married. So I think for now, that's what I would say about the marriages, the consideration that is paid for marriages in Zimbabwe.
Thanks, Marcia. That's actually very interesting. I have a follow up though. Where you are 18 and you decide to jump the gun, how do the elders take that? In my original culture, which is Ghanaian, the elders would definitely frown upon that because it means that you are literally taking the process from them. You're giving yourself away and you're not yourself to give away. You don't own yourself to give away, something like that. So how does it work in the Zimbabwean culture?
Exactly. You know, I think the cultures are essentially the same because a child does not just belong to themselves. They belong to a community rather, and they expect to, to gather the head of the community and everyone else who's involved to come and witness the marriage celebrations. So it is frowned upon. And usually, in terms of the African society, you are not married until lobola has been paid, which is the bride price. So you are not married according to African culture and tradition. And if something is to happen to the wife, and if the wife is to pass on before the husband, then issues will start to arise. Because then the husband will be expected to marry the grave of the deceased wife. So the marriage consideration that I talked about is essentially what the family of the deceased woman would then expect before you are buried. So yes, indeed, it's frowned upon, and people expect that lobola be paid, which is the bride.
Mm, that's very interesting. Thanks, Marcia. Dan, tell me a bit about what happens in East Africa.
Thank you so much, Amma. Well, in Uganda, there are quite so many tribes. I can say close to almost 30 to 40 tribes in Uganda. And listening to my previous colleague, I see there's a lot of relations between all the different marriage procedures. So the traditional ceremony of marriage has its own costs depending on what the parties of the marriage want. So in this case, you find that if the family sit down and they look at different ways on how to value how much they should cost the girl. That's when now they decide on the different prices. Uh, Uganda has majority are the Bantu tribes, taking almost half, slightly more than half. And the traditional ceremony in Uganda, the Baganda, they call it the Kwanjula. The Banyankole, they call it Kuhinjira. When you go up north, it's called Keny. But all of them, it's all about introducing the girl's family or the man's family to the girl. So the different processes really vary in terms of the different cultures. For the Wanyankole, because they are more of cattle keepers, you have to bring in close to almost about 10, 15 cows, each cow being valued at about, let's say, about 1 million or 1.5 million shillings, Uganda shillings. When you come to Baganda, they are looking at more what are you going to bring in terms of goods like let's say, what are you bringing? They talk about things like chairs, things like television sets. On top of that, there's also the bride price that will also come along with the different goods that you're bringing to the table. When you go up north, these are the Nilotics, the Luo people. For them, the process is a bit different. When you intend to marry a girl from that side, you send a letter, and the family has to respond by also sending back a letter with the different requirements that you need, and then you come on the day when has been set, and you discuss and negotiate, in along all the different requirements that they set there. So, in a nutshell, that is, how Uganda is in relation to the processes that are involved. In terms of registration processes, of course, all the different parties have to be above 18. That's a must, and all marriages have to be registered with the Uganda Registration Bureau, and also they have their own requirements whereby if registration is made within 6 months from the date of the ceremony, you have to pay a particular amount of money. If it's made before, you have to pay a particular amount of money as well, and all this goes to the government of Uganda. Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. That's actually pretty interesting. I think we have some similarities between Uganda and Botswana. In Botswana, the average cost of a wedding, which would include the civil and the customary marriage, would be between $10,000 to about $25,000. Dependent on the taste of the couple, of course, and what the requirements of the families. There are basically three different stages to the marriage. There's the patlo, which is the asking for the bride's hand, which is typically done by the family of the groom, going to the bride's family and doing the asking. In Ghana, it's typically known as the knocking, but in Botswana, it's called patlo. And then the second stage is the mahadi, which is the payment of the bride price, which could be anything between um, it's usually paid in cows, and usually they ask for an average of 8 cows, each cow costing about $300. The final stage of the customary marriage is the koroso, where the bride is handed over to the groom's family. Um, like I said, there's two different types of weddings. There's the customary and the civil. Customary is usually done at the khotla, where the chief hands over or agrees to the marriage. Civil is usually done at the National Registry. But now I'm jumping into the other question. Tell me, Mercia, is it the same in Zimbabwe? Do you have those two typical types of marriage, the civil and the traditional?
Thank you very much for that question. Indeed. So actually in Zimbabwe, all our marriages are governed by what we call the Marriages Act, Chapter 5.15. So it harmonizes the customary marriages and the civil marriages. So the requirement before for the customary marriage, there was no need for registration. But this new piece of legislation now makes it mandatory for even the customary marriage to be registered. So yes, we have those two marriage regimes, the customary marriage and the civil marriage. But like I indicated beforehand, most of these marriages start with a customary celebration where the bride price is paid, and then people then decide to say, are we ending it at the customary level or are we graduating to the civil union? So for the people who prefer a polygamous situation, they would prefer to remain at the customary because now it allows many wives. And then for the people who really want to stick to the monogamous type of marriage, one wife, one husband, then they can then graduate it to a civil marriage. I hope that answers it.
It definitely does, Mercia. Thanks. What about you, Dan?
Well, from Uganda, Uganda has got several forms of recognized marriages. These are, of course, beginning with the customary one. We also have the Muslim, the church, civil, and also the Hindu marriages. In relation to customer marriages are celebrated according to the rights of an African community, and one of the parties to the marriages must be a member of that community as a must. When you look at the Muslims' marriages, they're celebrated in relation to the different rites and observations of the Muslim faith between persons professing the Muslim religion. For the church one, of course, church one usually, if you're a typical Ugandan, let's say African, we recognize the cultural one being the first one, and then the church one being the second one, and they're celebrated in a licensed place of worship that has to be recognized by the Uganda Registrations Bureau. For the Hindu, they're celebrated between Hindus, where both civil marriages are celebrated in the official registration marriages. So unlike church, civil, or Hindu marriages that are monogamous in nature, customary Muslim marriages are potentially polygamous. And customer marriages can, however, be converted into a church marriage if it's still a monogamous marriage. But for a church marriage to happen, the cultural one has to first take precedence before you go to the church one. However, in this day, you find that the people who decide to go and do the civil marriage without going to church, and the numbers are quite increasing lately. And where people do, because of the costs involved with the processes, with the church wedding and the whole celebration, people decide to just go to government offices and do the civil marriage directly without going to the church. Because usually the church wedding is expected to be celebrated with a wedding party afterwards. So people who don't go through the church wedding, usually they're not expected to go and do through a party. So, and that is in relation to the costs that are involved.
Which makes absolute sense. Thanks, Dan. Tell me, before I move on, is Malawi in here? Malawi, have you joined us?
Yes, this is Bernard Chiruzi. I'm in.
Hi, Bernard. How are you?
I'm all right. And how are you?
Fine, thanks. Bernard, do you mind telling us about what the financial processes around getting married are in Malawi?
That's okay. It's all about dependent on the tribes. Malawi as a country is divided into mainly three regions, and all the three regions are dominated by different tribes. So it depends on which area, but largely the entire process basically begins by the two meeting. And then in their process, obviously exchange of money is there. And when it is time for, let's say, one to go to the parents of the other, immediately after that, they are introduced to their uncles who act as the mediator. And at that time, that's when, depending on the tribe, they charge some fees that are supposed to be paid, especially to the man who is supposed to pay because the man is getting the woman. But we also have one tribe which literally doesn't charge anything, especially in the southern part. Not just one, but a number of tribes, where if you want to get married, you pay nothing other than when you are now, let's say, holding your actual, whether religious wedding, the actual ceremony, that's when you could incur some costs. But otherwise, if you want to get married, you just go to the relatives, they give consent, and then you take each other, do the entire process, no money paid on that, especially in the southern part. But the central part and the northern part, that's where the Lobola part does also apply, just like another country that has already contributed to. Sure.
Do you find that now with Gen Z and the millennials, that culture is not being given the respect that it used to in Malawi?
The culture of paying something when you want to get married, like for the Lobola one, I would say initially our colleagues in the northern part, where people pay cows, maybe 5, 10 cows, if at all they are to get the woman. It used to be strict in the past, but at the moment, because of um, the global village, because people are now able to move from the northern part, stay in the south, and now they're living together with people of different culture. People are no longer really adhering to that. And as I've mentioned, there are people who are preferring not to get someone where they will pay, though they're coming from that tribe. They're preferring to go for someone whom they will not pay. But there are also others who are coming from the area where they don't pay. They also prefer to go and marry somewhere where they will pay. So literally, it all depends on one's preference. But certainly, the new generation is slowly diluting such practices.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
that's the same for Botswana as well. Um, Tell me, Julian, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Oh, nice to have you,
Um,
Julian. Thanks for joining. What are the financial processes around getting married in South Africa? And what are the different types of marriages that you have?
Okay, what an interesting topic, and really, it's. I am going to be sharing with you so that you get to understand that in South Africa, I guess it's more similar to Botswana, and I also heard with Zim as well. They are paying US dollars. You know, in African culture, as we all know, the groom is expected to pay lobola, which is mahadi, and normally the bride family will request that according to the number of cows, as already been mentioned earlier on. But in South African context, it will be like they will ask if they are saying they're requesting 10 cows, you don't have the live cows, then they will request you to, they will actually give you the price of how much each cow will cost. So if each cow is costing 8,000 rand in rents, then it will mean you need to be paying around 8,000 for 80,000 for the bride. Now, again, sometimes it also depends. They might be charging you higher or getting a discount if your bride has got a child. They might be saying, okay, this is the cost of the bride, and you will then take the child with, we call it we hapalina money. So in that instance, it will be like it's 80,000, you take all, you know. And at some cultures, they will be saying, our daughter is a virgin, and you will have to pay more for that as well, over and above the 80,000 for the fact that she's a virgin. You will actually have to pay more. So you can imagine now, if this is the instance where the groom has to pay that amount of money and he doesn't have any savings, and if he goes and make a debt, then already it will mean as a couple they will start the wedding complicated, because they will already be having debts up front that they will be paying together as well now. And a research was done in South Africa by Wedding Expo, and it has been shown that once, because remember, in this culture they will pay lobola, and after that there will be the traditional wedding that will be taking place, where they will then, the two families will then celebrate. A cow can be slaughtered or a goat, and they will exchange gifts as well. So you can imagine over 2 days, if that is the celebration of cultural wedding. Then if the couple move and say they want a Western wedding, that is extra money that is required as well. So like I said, a Wedding Expo a director has actually given out the research that was conducted to say, in South Africa, Western weddings after the cultural wedding, they spend around 80 to 120,000. So you can actually see that this couple need to have a lot of money. So in this fact, it means a financial advisor is of importance, because if you're gonna get in and start and having that wedding without having to apply your mind and seeing whether you've got enough money, you will find yourself having indebted, and sitting with an advisor will come very handy, because then the advisor will then assist the couple so that they can do a bit of Googling, you know, to check whether they do have money, and giving some advices around that as well. So it is very important that when you are going to get married as a couple, you need to consider and check yourself and see whether you will be able able to afford to be in that marriage as well. And there are a couple of things that you also need to be considering as a couple as well, to be saying, are you going to be having kids? The religion as well plays a very big role. So it's very important that we need to understand this implication, because if we don't understand, it might also affect. And moving along to probably the next question that you just asked, having to say, what type of marriages do we have? You know, in South Africa, we have customary marriage. So in an event where they chose to say, you know what, we go in the cultural, traditional route, that's customary marriage. That customary marriage also needs to be registered with our Home Affairs Department as well, so for it to be recognized. But remember, if it's not registered, normally there would be what we call setlankana, you know, those letters that they exchange between the two families, where they say the family of the Mojas have agreed to pay a certain amount of money towards the Mangabas for the bride, and then that letter carries weight to say now officially they are married. So in an event where they are not registered, and then it will be married as well, and if there's no contract, automatically this type of marriage will then be in community of property. It means they will share everything. They will share profits and losses. Now, we do have other type of marriages. We call it in community of property, which is the Western way, where I'm saying now we share everything. So if they marry in that type of marriage, this type of marriage, it means you are now owing, if you are marrying your partner who has debts, you marry them in community of property, you are going to inherit your partner's debts. If you marry your partner who has got a pension fund for probably 10 years, and should you decide to divorce down the line, you will share the pension fund of your partner as well. So it's quite important that we need to understand, because again, the couple will only understand these marriages if they bring the aspect of a financial advisor, because I guess a financial advisor will then be there to explain different marriage regimes as well. Now, the other second type of marriage that we have besides the customary is out of community of property with accrual. And what does that mean? It means what I had before marriage remains mine, what he had remains his, what we acquire together, that's what we share. Now, what do we share? We share profits, not losses. That's what it means. So if I want to buy a car and I'm married in this type of marriage, my husband doesn't have to come and sign at the dealer. The debt that I'm creating is my debt. If I cannot pay it, it's not his problem. It's my problem. And when I settle the car, it's no longer my car. It's our car. So we share the car. It's our car because it's now it's accrual as well. And then we've got out of community of property. There's no sharing in that one. So it means what I had is mine, what he has is his, but they still love each other. So it's very important that you need to engage a financial advisor, because having to understand, because there are people that got married and they didn't realize that they just went in a default marriage, because if you don't have a contract, automatically in South Africa, it will mean you are married in community of property. So if you don't engage an aspect of a financial advisor, you might find yourself having fallen in a default type of marriage, which is in community of property, without any information of applying and having that knowledge of getting to know exactly what you are actually putting yourself into when it comes to debt as well. So thank you so much for that opportunity.
Thanks, Julian. Tell me, number one, is there a sort of like test that goes into looking into the virginity aspect of the bride? Is there like a test? I'm very interested in that. And then secondly, I know financial advising is very important, and that's the point of this discussion. The financial advice aspect of getting married, which is lacking completely. But how do people typically get married in South Africa, knowing that they want to get married? Maybe they're young, maybe they've been cohabiting for a long time, and the pressure's on. What financial means do they use to get married?
Okay, I think in a place where they need to test the virginity, I think in other cultures, yes, there is. I think in Zulu, I think there would be that time where they would be going for testing and so on. So there is a time where there is testing that is taking place for checking of the virginity. But coming to the next question around how do people having to decide on going about on getting married, the young ones, like I said, it's quite important to be saying if the young ones they want to get married, the first thing first. So it's very important that they need to check whether they saved enough money to cover what they are actually planning, which is starting a family, because you can't just wake up and say, we've been living together. I guess this is the time where we need to be going and committing as well. And we know culturally you need to pay that lobola as well. So you need to now sit and check whether you've got enough money so that you can start that engagement where we discuss issues around finances. And hence it's also very important that if even the young millennials as well, we should not overlook the fact that, there is financial life after getting married as well. We might be loving each other today. We're thinking that we want to get married tomorrow, but very important that we also need to be doing a Google check, credit checking, having to understand that, do I have money? Am I able to move and start a family with this partner? So that when you send your families to the bride's family, they need to know that you do have that money, because now it's wedding season in South Africa, and they say a lot of weddings happen during this time, where we find people being so excited during this time, they just want to commit without being aware whether they are able to commit or not. And we do see a lot of people doing a fat and set, we call it fat and set in South Africa, where people are just cohabiting. And we should understand that in South Africa, it is that type of marriage, that type of relationship is actually not committed to be saying it's a marriage. It's not regarded as a marriage. So people cannot be saying we've been living together for 6 months automatically. There's no automatic in that instance. So it is not recognized when people are just living together and thinking that they will say now we are a couple. It still says you need to follow through and get to understand all the implication of some of the things that you need to be planning ahead around finances as well. Hence, I said earlier on, engaging a financial advisor will come very handy, because a financial advisor will actually be able to see whether are you having enough money to commit, and then if you don't, perhaps maybe wait a bit. Don't be in a rush. We should the millennials should not put themselves under pressure and saying all my friends are getting married, and I guess maybe I should also be getting married. Moving along. So it's very important that we should be able to understand that what we are putting ourselves into. And perhaps maybe we also need to know that maybe the gist of lobola has probably lost its meaning during this time, because we find some families charging a lot of money, and then they might be saying, my daughter has gone to university, has got 3 degrees, and for that matter we need 300,000 or whatever the amount as well. So it's very important that we need to understand that what is the meaning of paying lobola, and maybe going back to the basic as what is it was meant for, the two families coming together and forming ubuhlobo, and what we calling getting to know each other and being neighborly and being friendly as well, making the family bigger as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Julian. And some people are saying 100%. We've lost the meaning behind the lobola, and that's key. I even have like a personal experience where my little sister recently got married, and she asked me, what's the point of asking for the bride price? We don't have parents. Why are we even enforcing this cultural aspect of the wedding? Why don't we just go ahead and jump to the white wedding? And my response was simply that this is how you bring the two families together. This is what will dictate the way the other family even views you as their bride coming into their family, right? And typically in my culture, which I shouldn't really be speaking much about because I'm originally Ghanaian, but I'm speaking for Botswana. But in the Ghanaian culture, typically when you get the bride price, sometimes parents even actually give it back to the bride and the groom and say, look, we just took this as a token just to see that you respect our culture, but we're going to take a little bit from it and give it back to you for you to start your life. In respect of Botswana, in terms of the financial aspect of getting married, a lot of marriages happen under strain because you've been cohabiting for a while, or and then as a result you have to take a loan to be able to fund it, because a lot of young couples cannot even afford the 150,000 to 300,000 pula, which is the equivalent of $30,000 for a wedding. But anyway, that brings me to the poll. There's a poll in the chat box, and it reads, is it important for couples before they say I do to discuss their financial status with their partner? Hashtag African marriages. The answers are yes, definitely. No, I don't see the point, or maybe. Please give your answers. I'm very interested to see what the thoughts are around this. Is it important for couples before they say I do to discuss their financial status with their partners? Um I'm going back to Mercia. Mercia, do you mind telling us about some of the matrimonial regimes in Zimbabwe?
In Zim, I will start by saying that all our marriages are out of community of property. I just had to highlight this because the previous speaker really talked about the disadvantages of and advantages of being in an in community kind of marriage. So in Zimbabwe, despite the marriage regime you are in, all of them are out of community of property. So what's yours is yours. What's mine is mine before, during, and after the marriage. It's only then when we're dissolving the marriage now where the courts want to determine who then contributed what to the acquisition of the property that is registered in my name so that I compensate the other party for their monetary contribution. But essentially, what's mine is mine, what's his is his. So in Zimbabwe, we, like I indicated earlier on, we have the civil marriage, we have the registered customary law marriage. Then there are still unregistered customary law unions, which the law is lobbying for people to quickly rush and register, either with their chiefs, with designated embassies, and stuff like that. And then there is also what is called a qualified civil marriage, which recognizes marriages such as the Islamic kinds of marriage. And as one speaker once alluded to on this platform, this is a potentially polygamous marriage, and it is done according to Christian beliefs of people such as Islamic people. And then there is a very tricky one that was also introduced by the New Marriages Act in Zimbabwe that I also alluded to earlier on, which are civil partnerships. Civil partnerships, the law says they are not marriages, but people live in a domestic setting. In other words, these are people who are just cohabiting, no cultural formalities were made, and no registration was done. And this was in recognition of the fact that people can actually live as husband and wife, but no lobola was paid and no formalities were made. And people can actually live for more than 20 or so years and acquire properties and actually amass an estate. And the question is, if that union is to dissolve, how do you protect the rights of the parties? So it is recognized that people can be in a civil partner, and then the issues that are arising and the discourse that is ongoing is due to the fact that the law then acknowledges that even people who are legally married to other spouses can also have civil partnerships with other people. And that's where much of the discourse is happening around the Zimbabwean marriage regime. So this was a new edition, and it's not a marriage, it's just people who are living in a domestic setting, and it's meant to protect both parties in the event that there's a dissolution of such a union. Thank you. I hope you're answered.
Thanks, Mercia. You've actually answered my next question as well. So, Dan, do you mind telling me about the matrimonial regimes and about the living trends? What happens when you cohabit? And what are the implications when your partner who you've been cohabiting for passes away?
Thank you so much. The marriage regimes in Uganda, marriage as an institution can have some significant impact on both men and women's property rights. Even though property is discussed here in the context of marriage, it is important to remember that women have property rights outside marriage, including when they are single, separated, or even divorced. According to the Constitution of Uganda, both men and women have the same rights to own property, either as individuals or as joint. So when people get married, they do not lose those rights. However, because couples tend to share property, what belongs to the husband or what belongs to the wife and what belongs to both become confusing in the end of it all. So in many cultures in Uganda, most or all property usually belongs to the man, even if the wife has it before they get married, or the person or when they buy it as a couple. It's important for women and both men to own the property. The current laws in Uganda do not clearly spell out the property rights of both men and women, but there are a few other attributes within the Constitution that are attributed towards that, whereby all people, men and women, are equal before the law, and also they all have the same rights to own property. Women have equal rights as men in getting married during marriage, and if when they decide to end the marriage. So currently, we find that usually the property that you get when you are married is what is put into discussion in case, let's say, the marriage is ending. So in both cases, you find that they have to go through the courts to discuss on who should take what percentage and who should take the other. And in case of separation, you find if let's say couples were not yet married and they happen to separate, they all go with whatever they came with during the time when they were together. Divorce in this case, where the marriage ends or a couple decides to separate properties that they have must be divided, where women and men may bring their own property into the marriage. They may also decide to acquire and improve on the property together. So in this case, when they are married and they decide to separate, all that is put into the table through the court and it's divided equally in that case. Yeah. And according to the emerging trends of living arrangements also, whereby people are cohabiting in case of death or in case of separation, in case of death during living arrangements that was not formally accepted or formally through the court, you will go with whatever you came with. And the court will not presume the existence of marriage simply because the parties have been cohabiting for many years. The presumption is applicable to confirming the existence of marriage and not creating one. So at the end of it all, you find that if a partner passes on while in a living arrangement, the right forum to pronounce living arrangements or symbolic of a marriage would be to the court, clothed with the jurisdiction of both matters. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Dan. I think perhaps maybe after hearing what you just said, I thought perhaps let me just share what is currently happening in South Africa, because a research has been done and it has shown that 70% of South Africans do not have wills, which is a worrying factor. So if people are going to be dying with no wills, it is really it becomes very complicated as well. So we need to understand that when you lose a breadwinner with no will already, we have seen COVID, a lot of lives were lost. We have seen thousands of widows and widowers and orphans left behind. So it's quite important that people need to leave legacies behind for their loved ones, and hence it's also very important, because if they don't have a financial advisor, they might find themselves having a problem as well. So it's very important that we should be able to educate people that are actually getting married to understand that, yes, perhaps Vattenstad in South Africa, it might not be recognized, but as a couple, you can actually legally protect yourself by drafting up a will. I thought maybe let me come up and just share that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Julian. Very important. I know in some African regions where you don't have a will, the family of whoever is deceased will come and move children out of the house, take everything that the wife has, and literally leave the wife and the children destitute if it's the father, the father who has passed away. So very will a will is I can't even stress the importance of a will enough. Actually, in Old Mutual Botswana, we're training our staff and our customers now on the importance of wills and actually providing them with access to attorneys who are able to assist with the drafting of wills. Um, the last poll is now going out, and it says you can find it in the chat box. It says, what do you think every couple needs to agree on before getting married? Kids or no kids? Assets before marriage? All of the above? And you can type your answer. Mercia, I think at this juncture we are out of time, so I will allow you to give us your closing remarks, please.
From Zimbabwe, my parting shots would be, due to the various marriage regimes that we have, most people don't understand and appreciate the implications. In as much as it is good that the law tried to harmonize the various marriage regimes, there is still that misalignment. And when one of the parties pass on, that's where you see the misalignment coming into play, with the relatives of the deceased believing that they need to grab everything from the children or from the remaining spouse. And this is where the aspect of proper estate planning comes into play. People have children dotted around Zimbabwe, as an example, and some even brag that they have children dotted around the continent. But the question now is, what are we doing to equalize the treatment of all our children that are dotted around? Are we deliberate about the estate planning that we are putting into place? Are we deliberate in terms of acquisition of assets? Are we deliberate in terms of distribution of such assets in anticipation of death? So the marriage institutions really then tie together with the aspect of speaking to a financial advisor that has been alluded to. It's very important for us to plan and to be deliberate, because there's so many children and there's so many spouses, and at times it's difficult to determine who is the actual surviving spouse where nothing is registered. Thank you.
Thanks, Mercia. Um, Dan, your parting words.
Thank you so much. Mine is mainly very simple. We all know that at one point in life we'll come to a closure. So estate planning is very important, putting in place protection mechanism to ensure that your family has a future. And the primary goal for many estate plans is to protect and provide for the loved ones and their future. And this mainly, when you plan through an investment advisor or someone who has got knowledge within the planning of estates, it gives you peace of mind, which enables you to know that your intended beneficiaries will have a future. It also allows you to distribute your estate in the proportion of your choice. And in this case, you can, through either your lawyer, you can come up with different ways on how to, do it in a more significant way. It also preserves the wealth and enables your future generations to prepare. And some of the considerations that you can put in place to protect your loved ones can be through getting a life insurance cover, and also putting up investments through, let's say, stocks or bonds, and aligning your dependents to be able to earn through the dividends. One of the ways also, which many people I think might not even like, is registering is registering the properties in the names of the beneficiaries, including your wife, in case you are to pass on. So that, and this will help to avoid disputes when you're not around. you need also to inform your spouses and children about your investments and businesses so that they can follow up in case of absence. And also, you can have joint accounts with your partners and your children. Yeah, I think that's it. You can also probably have a lawyer who will structure a detailed trust fund to help your children and spouses in case you're not around. And all these are avenues that can be done through the company and also other different ways in which you can all put all this in place. I think that is my closing remark. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dan. Definitely sentiments that we need to think about. Julian, can I get your parting words, please, ma'am?
Okay, my parting words is for a couple, all the couples that are actually thinking of committing, to say I can before they say I do, because the type of marriage that they will be choosing can also affect their finances, and they need to make sure that they have a will in place to protect. In an event where you've got minor children, you need to understand that putting them as beneficiaries, you might find it as dying without a will, I guess, because they might not be able to access that money, and it will also assist when you have a will, because you will be covering the children from previous marriages. You will also be getting to have that allowance or some allocation for your partner as well, and it's also very important to make sure that your liabilities do not exceed your assets, because if that is the case, you are going to find yourself having a very serious problem as well. And very important, as a couple, make sure that you've got life cover. So before you get married and committing, tell your partner, my husband, should I die, you'll get 3 million as the wife. And should you also die, perhaps I will also get 3 million, because we need to open up and be able to share that information. Because if we are closing and we are not talking these things, and we are assuming that it will be discovered later on, you might cry later on in life as well. So it's very important that we need to be able to say I can before you say I do as well. And having beneficiaries, having to update your beneficiaries whenever there's a change in your life as well, and getting to understand that when you've got a life cover that has no beneficiary, then you need to know that all that money will then move into your estate. And when it gets into your estate in South Africa, there's taxes that needs to be paid as well. So we pay money until we die. So taxes we pay until the last event as well. So it's very important that you do need a financial advisor, because a financial advisor will actually be able to do estate planning with you. And for those that are cohabiting as well, perhaps maybe check, do your research and get to understand if maybe the partner that you are cohabiting with, if they do have a pension fund wherever they're working, because you've been living together, perhaps maybe they can put you up there as a beneficiary if it's allowed within the fund that they are working for as well. So it's very important that you do need an expert of a financial advisor in all aspects of getting to commit yourself in marriage as well. So that will actually be my parting remark. Say I can before you say I do. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Julian. That's amazing. I think you have all said it all. I don't think there's much to add. What I can add is that COVID-19 showed us that there's no age limit to being financially aware, right? And securing your property or your investments. Any age. You can die at any age. So it's important to secure your property for your family. It's an act of love. So I encourage all of us to share these sentiments with our families and our friends, and get them to do the right thing before they get married, even as and when. um yeah, engage your financial advisors. It doesn't hurt. So thank you, team. Thank you, Zim, Mercia, Dan, Julian. It's been great knowledge sharing. Thank you to all the listeners as well. I hope you learned something. Till next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good
Bye.
day. Bye.